Have you ever felt like your prayers didn't reach any higher than the ceiling? When we use that phrase, we're expressing the feeling that we have that we've prayed for something, maybe over and over again, maybe for months or years, and it seems like God's not listening, like he hasn't heard and he isn't acting. There were generations of Israelites who seem to have had that kind of experience. At the beginning of the book of Exodus, Israel is, of course, in Egypt. God has taken them there to protect them from the famine that's in Canaan. And they not only survive there, but they're thriving. They're doing very well. They're increasing and multiplying. But in Exodus 1:8, it says that a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he came to see the growing Israelite population as a threat, and so he enslaves them and then persecutes them by making that work harder, almost impossible, and then even making an order that their male children should be killed. It's hard for us to imagine the level of oppression that they were experiencing in Egypt. And it seems like that happened for a long time, right? So we know that Israel was in Egypt for over 400 years. And there are clues throughout Exodus 1 and 2 just about how much time is going by. Certainly Moses, all of his life a lot of his life goes by. He's born, he's raised, and then he flees, all during this time of oppression. And then at the end of Exodus 2, there's some amazing verses. Exodus 2:23 says, "And it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Egypt died." So we don't know exactly how many years that was, but it seems like generations are going by. And then it says, "And the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried." So they are in agony, and in their agony, they're looking to God. It says at the end of verse 23, "Their cry came up unto God by reason of the bondage." And I wonder if during verse 23, all that's happening there with the process of time that it talks about, and the sighing and the crying, if people were born and lived and worked in those enslaved conditions and then died, wondering if and how God would answer their prayers. But then verse 24 says, "And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon his children, the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them." God was not ignoring their prayers. He heard their prayers, and he knew what their conditions were. He knew their burdens. He knew it was on their mind. He knew it was on their heart. And he would act based on his covenant with them, based on his committed relationship with them. He would fulfill his promises to them. And his response ultimately would be nothing less than the mighty acts that we see in the plagues that in the judgment that falls on Egypt, and the exodus of Israel out of Egypt, even as they plundered the Egyptians and then were delivered again through the Red Sea. God does many mighty acts to deliver and save his people. But the waiting was still hard, and they still prayed for a long time. Maybe you're in a situation like this. Maybe there's something that you've been praying about for a long time, and you wonder if your prayers get higher than the ceiling. Friends, let this be one reminder that acknowledges the hardship, the sighing and the crying that we experience, but that also assures us that God hears our prayers, and that though he may delay, that he will act. And he will act in nothing short of our salvation. And we know what the end of the story is in Revelation, that while the saints cry, "How long, O Lord?" in the book of Revelation, that God will act. He will throw Satan and all of the wicked into the lake of fire and bring about perfect judgment that will be satisfying. And he will remove every tear from our eyes. And he will do away with death. The last enemy will be defeated. And all that's wrong will be made right. So this is one more reminder for us of the experience of God's people and about how God is faithful to save. And that is still who we pray to. So let's endure in praying, knowing that even though we groan and sigh, that God hears, he sees us, he remembers his covenant, and he will